Hi everybody, welcome to the dungeon. My name is Robin and today is Lampworking 101.50. We made it to 50, I can't believe it. This technique, this flower petal implosion technique, is just incredible. I have been kind of off again, on again working on this technique so I can share it with you guys, and I have finally discovered what I've been doing wrong. This bead takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, like everything. Give it a try, even if it's smaller. I do tend to go a little large on my pieces, as we know. I'm just totally, I am so proud of myself for, for getting this technique down. I'm just so happy to be able to bring this to you. And okay, on that note, let's get right into it. We will see you guys next time in the dungeon. Okay, we're gonna start this bead off with a transparent orange. And I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of it on the mandrel to make a small spacer bead. This is where everything starts. And by the end, this inside bead will be very, very small. I'm going to add some tiny black dots using a stringer. I have about 8 dots all the way around, right on the top of this little spacer bead. And this is all going to be the stamen part of the flower. I add some clear on top, just one really nice wrap, and then I'm going to melt it down so it's nice and smooth again. This is important as it is the very, very center of your bead. Now on top of this, I'm going to add 6 orange dots. You can add however many you want. You just want to make sure that they're fairly evenly spaced out and not touching each other. I'll melt those in all the way, and then I'm going to add a couple of little black dots on top of those orange petals. Just right on the top. And then those are melted in. And on top of that, I will add another wrap of clear. And all of this is just the very top part of the flower. This is just the beginning, folks. I'm going to melt this all in. And just to be on the safe side, it's important that you trap the whole dot in clear. You want to encase the whole thing. So I went ahead and added a dot in between the other dots on the top and the bottom of this bead just to make sure it was totally coated. It may have been a bit of overkill at this point because, like I said, when everything is finished, just this bead right here is really, really small. Now we're just going to heat this up and just squeeze it down very slightly with the mini mashers, and we are ready for the petals. So this first row of petals, I'm going to start with a light blue opaque, and where I'm going to add these, you see, is right on the bottom side, the bottom half. They're also in between the previous dots in orange that I have laid down. You want to make sure that every one of these dots is as close as you can get them all to the same size. I'm heating those in, and if you notice, a lot of times with this specific bead, I will be heating just on the petal side. I'm adding a transparent sky blue. And then on top of these small dots, I will add a black dot. It'll make it look really nice. And you'll see these little black dots in between every petal. I do tend to flatten the bead down just a little bit here and there on the edge of my marvering pad to keep things nice and even on the bottom. And once I'm done with the first row of petals, I am going to cover all of them in clear. This is so important to coat every single dot in the clear. If you have any that is not coated in clear, it will bleed up into the surface. So I'll go around and add my clear dots, and then in between those dots, I'll add another clear dot on the bottom half and then on the top half, just to make sure everything is coated. Not only do I hit the spaces in between the dots on the top half, but if I think there's any bit of color showing through, I will go ahead and trap a little bit more clear on that side, or where I think it needs to be. So whatever happens, before you start to reheat everything, make sure that everything is completely trapped underneath the clear, and you should be good to go. All of my heating at this point is on the bottom and the bottom side. I hit the top a bit just to make sure there's still heat in it, but most of the time you'll see all the heat right here at the bottom. Now for my second row of petals, I have a pink that I'm going to be using, the bubblegum pink. And very carefully, I just want to place a dot right at the bottom side in between the previous dots. Looking good. I have a little bit that I need to move out of the way. And then I'm going to add cranberry pink on top of those. This is just a beautiful color. If you've never tried it, I hope you do give it a try. It's just a gorgeous red. I'm going to melt those in slightly and press them down just a little bit because I really want room to add the black dots, but I don't want to melt everything down completely until I have these on there. Now we can go ahead and melt it down. And as I'm melting everything down, as we go along these flower petals, I do start to notice that the underside of the bead, the bottom half, is starting to get really concave. Don't worry too much about that just yet, because in the long run, it will all melt down. So on top of this row, I will do the same thing. It's just being very repetitive, you guys. Just adding that clear in between, on top of, in between, and on the top of each dot. And you want to make sure that when you're doing this, you're only adding the clear where you need it. You're not adding the clear to the top part of the bead. It's all on the bottom half. All right, this is looking pretty good, you guys. I do a lot of heating on the bottom and on the bottom side. I want it to be a nice round bead before I continue. Okay, now we're doing our third row. This time, on top of the pink, I'm going to add a really nice transparent blue. This is ink blue, but it does come out to be a really lovely violet. This time I'm going to add some orange dots just to change things up. There's so many variations on these petals, it's crazy. The colors, the combinations, if you want it to be a pointed dot or a rounded dot or petal, it's just amazing how many different ways you can come up with patterns for this bead. So have fun with it, get crazy. Just make sure that your clear is on top of every petal before you move on. That's all I have to say. It's all about the clear, you guys. I was trying to make these beforehand, and that was where I had all of my problems, was just how I added the clear. I was adding my clear in wraps instead of in dots. and that made all the difference. I'm almost ready to put the petal part on, but I wanted to make sure before I do that, that cavity, that concave on the bottom half is all melted out. And you'll start to see how all those petals will pull themselves down into that, close to that mandrel at the bottom. And that's when you know you've got it. You've got it. All right, after a nice heating there, I will go ahead and do the final row. I'll start with the bubblegum pink again because it's just such a great color. And as I'm adding on these little dots here, it's interesting to notice how much smaller that first little bead was that you started with on the other side. Okay, I'm going to melt those down just a little bit and then add a really nice transparent emerald green. When you add an opaque and then a transparent and then an opaque on top, that transparent can make those opaque colors float a little bit, and it just gives it a really cool look. So on top of that, I'm going to add the pea green, which is a great lime green. And you can add these dots slightly lower than the previous dots if you want, or you can add them right into the middle. That's what I opted for because it just made my life a little easier when I worked on these. Just add the dots in the middle and move on. All right, we're ready for our final layer of clear. You don't have to add the clear here if you don't want to. You can have those petals just on the surface. You can have them not melted in all the way and give it a little bit more texture. But on this one, I just wanted to finish it by adding clear on the whole thing. Just remember, add the clear right on top, and then on the bottom in between the dots, and then on the top of those in between the dots. That's the most important takeaway of this whole demonstration, is how the clear is added. Once I figured this out, it changed my whole game for these petal beads. All right, all we have to do is heat everything up. And of course, at the end, my bead just decided to pop itself right off the mandrel. So I just spent a little time rounding it out, and that was it. Time to put it away, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.